Do you like superhero stories? Do you hate superhero stories? Well, either way, you should read Worm. Worm is a web serial by a dude named Wildbow about a teenage girl in a world where a select amount of the population has superpowers, and of course they dress up in costumes and fight crime, and do crime. They're called capes, or parahumans. Now I know what you're thinking. I've seen this before. I've seen Marvel movies, or read comic books, or watched My Hero Academia. I've got this. But you haven't seen this before, I guarantee it. Worm combines some of the best parts of superhero narratives with the complexity of character and life that we so rarely get from the action genre. There are characters who can leap tall buildings in a single bound, or brainwash you with a look, and yet it still manages to feel more real than a lot of stories set in the quote-unquote real world. In this world, Earth-Bet, powers emerged in the 80s, so much of the environment will be familiar, and it's still a society that's trying to figure out what to do with powers. Our villains here aren't evil scientists and dark sorcerers, they're leaders of gangs, white supremacists, and serial killers. I think of Worm as a thought experiment, where all of the things in our world that we're forced to deal with are exaggerated. Growing up, dealing with racism, experiencing trauma, or trying to find love are all bad enough on their own, and dozens of authors have already depicted those events in stark realism. What Worm does then is put it in the context of superhero stories, weaving these two elements together as surely as a spider could weave a flexible, durable bodysuit. You know, if it were so inclined. By presenting a world and characters so nuanced and complex, it forces you to empathize with people and think about your own real life in a new way. For this reason, while action in superhero films can get a bit stale, action in Worm rarely does, because the fights are not just power versus power, now kick the crap out of each other. They're not even ideal versus ideal like in Black Panther. In many cases, the book makes you sympathetic to more than one side, simply by how it portrays so many nuanced and well-justified characters, which inevitably leads to each fight pulling hard on your emotions. And, to top it all off, the action goes far beyond the senseless bludgeoning we so often get. Each conflict is painted as much as a battle of wits, information, and trickery as it is a battle of strength. For any of you who've ever said, why doesn't the hero just use their power like this and solve the problem, this story is for you too. Everyone in Worm does use their power to the best of their ability, and it's positively delightful. If the way each power revealed itself wasn't also a great part of the story that I wouldn't want to spoil, I could give you countless examples of powers that just blew my mind with how cleverly they were used. On top of that, while powers can be variations of one another, no one power set is the same, which ensures that every single fight is absolutely unique for the factors it uses. The emotional weight coupled with the interesting dynamics serve to ensure that you won't want to just skip past the battle. There's so much more I wish I could tell you, but I'm afraid I can't get into it much without spoilers, so just go read it! Oh, and if you hate running out of things to read, I have news for you about this one. Worm isn't short. You'll be reading for a while. But the fact that it was a web serial, a type of fiction where chapters are released one by one online, means that if the story ever got uninteresting, ever failed to grab your attention, if each chapter didn't bring something new and gripping, people would just stop reading. And given that the community has only grown as time marches on, isn't that the best evidence to its credit? It may be the equivalent to 1.5 Harry Potter series by word count, but it fills itself to the brim with a cast of well over 100 fascinating, unique characters, all with their own power sets, motivations, and arcs throughout the narrative. By the time it reached its phenomenal conclusion, I felt like I'd read a story 10 times that length, and that the setting could easily offer 10 times as much. It works on every level, I think, because while I'm the kind of guy to analyze and think about stories long after their conclusion, Worm is one that you don't have to do that with. All the factors that I mentioned serve just as well to entertain as they do to provoke a more thoughtful approach from those inclined. I hope you all have the opportunity to experience this story and hopefully discuss it with me someday. I have a feeling it'll be something I bring up a good amount on this channel. I could talk about it for hours, I'm sure. And you know, there are people who've done just that. I can't wrap this up without giving the most heartfelt shout out to Scott and Matt of Doof Media. This will be a good book no matter how you want to enjoy it, I think. But if you are like me, you can't go without listening to their accompanying podcast, We've Got Worm, which is one of the most extensive and intelligent literary analysis projects I've ever had the privilege of listening to. TLDR, Worm has become one of my favorite stories of all time, and I implore you all to give it a chance by heading over to parahumans.wordpress.com. I'm J Maniac, and I thank you for your time.